Well, hello and welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. A little bit later on, I'm going to be joined by Keith Treacy and Barry Murphy to talk League of Ireland, Champions League, and also we'll have a look ahead to the May training camp for the boys in green in terms of players who may come in for it. But there's only one show in town this week, and this is the double header against Poland for the Republic of Ireland Women's in World Cup qualifying. We've got both games live on RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player. The one tomorrow, Tuesday, that is coverage underway at 4:30, kickoff at 5, RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player. And you can get in touch with us on sportpodcasts@rte.ie. So to build up to this game, this first game in Gdansk for Ireland against Poland, I'm joined by my colleague Anthony Pyne, and also Rachel Graham is back again this week. How are you both?
Very good, Raf, yeah.
Good stuff. I suppose, Anthony, bit of news though at the very top, and that is one squad member who's not going to be available for this first game.
Yeah, Rusha Littlejohn is definitely out for tomorrow, but Carla Ward is confident that she'll come back for Saturday's game at the Aviva Stadium. So, like, Rusha always has to manage that Achilles issue that she's had long term. So she generally doesn't train or trains very lightly in the lead into games. But there's been a bit of a flare up according to Carla Ward. She mentioned in her press conference this morning, and she's not going to make it. But bar that, everybody seems okay and ready to go. Yeah,
you've set the scene for us over the last few weeks in terms of what is needed from this game, and it's particularly because of what Poland did against the Netherlands in that same stadium in Gdansk. And the task for Ireland is very clear over these two games.
Yeah, and look, we probably always said, targeting these games is getting our wins, getting our points, but it's not going to be as easy as just showing up and playing and getting these points. These are a good team, off the back of the Euros, drew at Netherlands, lost to France, but they were down to 10 players for that whole second half of France. So, really tough ask of them. But look, they definitely are someone that we can target and take points, but I do think we're going to have to be, at our top levels to be going and taking points off these, especially I think in the away leg. I think Poland are looking at that the same as us, as getting points, and they're probably going to go all out and trying to win this game. If they come away with one win, one loss, they'll probably be happy enough because they'll still have that extra point over us. So I just think very, for tomorrow, look very kind of cautious how we maybe go about it. I think Poland are going to out of the traps, all guns blazing. Obviously have Ewa Pajor who can, win a game on her own. So look, it's not going to be as easy as, they're ranked similar to us in the world. So it's going to be a quite competitive game, close game. I think we have to be at our best.
And Aoife Mannion was talking about treating these almost like if it's a two-legged tie. Do you think that's sort of the way to go? And obviously the fact that it's away first and then bring it at home, that almost if you're in that mindset, it actually works a little bit better.
Yeah, I think the fact we're away from home probably works in our favour, where, you don't have to go all out in the first game. You don't have to throw all your eggs at this game and try and get 3 points. I think I'd come away with a point now. I think we'd be happy enough with that. Go to the Aviva then on Saturday, and we obviously have to go and try and win that one in the Aviva on Saturday, but I think if you come away with a loss tomorrow, it's a huge dampener on our camp. And, Saturday, even if we do win it, we're still that point behind. So I just think for tomorrow, if she is looking at it like a two-legged affair, just don't lose the first one.
Yeah, and in terms of how the players have been speaking, obviously Aoife Mannion, they're talking about a sort of two-legged approach, but generally what's been the mood and the way they've been speaking?
I think there's always confidence within the camp, but I mean, there is pressure on Ireland in this window. I think you can make an argument that these are their two hardest games, because France and the Netherlands are the two best teams in the group. So you go into those games, there's an element of, they'd never say this, and it's not a great way to say it. It's a free swing. It's not a free swing. They're competitive international games. Of course, they want to get results, and they played. That was a good first window for Ireland. They played very well against France. A little bit flatter over in Utrecht, understandably, I think, but still a little unfortunate not to get a point over there. But there's reduced expectation because you're playing two of the best teams in the world, certainly in the top 10. Now, for a long time, they have targeted this double. Like, Carla Ward was asked about it in her press conference this morning. Have you been targeting these games? She kind of shied away from saying that she has, but she certainly said before the campaign started that they're targeting the top 3 finish. They're targeting third. And realistically, that was always going to come down to this window. It's always going to be a shootout between Poland and Ireland. And as Rachel says, because Poland nicked a point against the Dutch, Ireland have to get 4 points out of this week. It's not going to be easy. It really isn't. They're going to be playing a very, all these, there's a lot, it's not just Ireland. There's a lot of countries that are on a journey. These are another one of those countries that got to their first major tournament at last year's Euros. There's a movement there as part of their 4-year strategy. They're playing in this stadium in Gdansk, very impressive stadium. Some Ireland fans might remember from Euro 2012 when the men's team hammered by
I think
Spain.
that's been wiped from the memory.
Yeah. The chastening evening. I was there myself. It wasn't very enjoyable, but it is a great stadium. And there's other efforts going off the field to try and really the interest levels in the girls' game over there have exploded, absolutely exploded, as they have here on a similar level. But because it's such a big country, on a bigger level, huge numbers flocking to the game after they made that breakthrough. So they have momentum and they've got good players, not just Pajor. There's other players. Kamsik was mentioned, who plays for Milan by Carla Ward specifically, but there's other players with Champions League experience. They're tough, they're well coached, and the pitch isn't great. So, it's not going to be the type of game where Ireland can establish possession and kind of stroke around and feel their way into it. I think it's going to be pretty frantic from the off. And the one thing that has come up in the build-up in the press conferences, the media days, and Carla Ward herself and Gary Cronin, actually, they've all mentioned the word complacency, avoiding any complacency. Just because we've got the France and the Netherlands games out of the way doesn't mean this is now going to be a little bit easier. I think they know what to expect here, but obviously they're going to have to deal with it. And it'll be a tough game. Yeah,
and Carla Ward is an admirer of Poland. Let's listen to her. This is from the squad announcement a couple of weeks ago.
Really like Poland. I liked them at the Euros. I think they've really progressed in the last couple of years, and they've been one of the most progressive nations, in my opinion, with the ball. They're very aggressive. They're very aggressive in transition. Obviously, you've got Pajor, who, again, scored a brace midweek against Real Madrid, and she was outstanding. And she's going to be somebody we have to stop. But they have quality everywhere, and I think that it would be naive to think that this is going to be a given, or we're going to have to absolutely earn the right to go and play and earn the right to win the game, for sure.
Okay, that's Carla Ward there. And as Anthony said, Rachel, Gdansk has become it's the home from home now for the Polish women's team. And their record there is pretty good in the last year. Like the last calendar year, they haven't lost there. And obviously those results against the Dutch, one in a friendly and then one obviously last month as well, does show they're going to be a very tough nut to crack there.
Yeah, and, all evidence points towards that. Even, their performances against the Netherlands, getting a point. The French game, probably can't really tell too much because they were down to 10 players in the second half, but like even when they were at the Euros that time, okay, they didn't come out of their group, but put it up to the teams that they played against. They beat Denmark, I think it was. So they're not
3-2.
Yeah, they're not any team that are going to just not show up against us. They, like Anthony was saying, like the growth of women's football there is huge. They have a lot more following now, so they have all that behind them in a big stadium now. They're not going to be a team that just shows up. Even if we are better than them, we do have better players. It's not going to be an easy game, but everything points to us having a tough game against them. They've an absolute world-class player in Pajor who, you can think of ways all day and night of how to stop her, but this is why she's the best in the world. She'll find a way around it. Like teams every week are probably trying to stop her and they can't. So, for us, it's someone that, can win a game or lose a game for us, So it's going to be huge. It's going to be a really tough game. And like Anthony was saying, look, it's strange to kind of speak about complacency coming in off the back of 2 losses, but I get what you're saying in terms of like we had good performances, we put it up against them. Don't just think that's going to be the case every week or every game you go to play. It's like Anthony was saying, this is probably tougher in terms of being motivated for we're away from home, probably won't have many fans at the game. It's easy to get yourself up motivated when there's 20,000 people in the Viva cheering you on. So these are the games that really kind of test you as a player and see, reveal your character and your professionalism, like going into the game, approach it like you would any other game. And it probably is. I don't think it's a must win, but it's definitely a must not lose for us.
And in regard to Pajor, when is she at her most dangerous in terms of the positions she picks up? Obviously, very different supporting cast than when she's at Barcelona plundering goals.
Yeah, and look, when you're playing for Barcelona, probably best team in the world, she's getting so much service. Maybe she might not get as much with Poland, but she's scored in her last 2 games in the last
against world class opposition.
So,
yeah.
And even if you look at her form over years, like she's never been out of form. Like she's always scoring goals. So I don't think she's someone that maybe she'll have an off day against us. I don't think she's that type of player. But there is probably a pattern to her goals. A lot of them do come from inside the box, and like she's a real knack, a real kind of talent for knowing where the ball is going to land. She really anticipates. She doesn't react, to if a keeper saves the ball. She just always seems to be there for a second ball or a loose ball. So, that's not by chance. That's her being, really talented, anticipating everything. She's probably someone that, she doesn't get it and run at players, be players. She wants to peel off players, get in behind. She wants to be facing the goal. And when she is facing the goal, if she gets a chance, she'll score. And for me, that's what makes you probably world class, where she might need one chance in the game and she'll score one goal. She doesn't need 5 or 6. So, no, she's a huge player for them. She's very quick as well. She's not someone that we want to get in a foot race with. I don't think probably anyone in our squad will maybe keep up with her. So, definitely not our defender. So, it's not something that we want to get into as well. But, look, definitely a real kind of poacher of a finisher. But, look, if you're thinking about giving yourself the best chances, it may be just trying to cut off the supply to her rather than, focusing solely on her and stop her.
Yeah, so realistically, not specifically marking her or trying to mark her out of a game, especially with her movement, I suppose.
Yeah, look, we'll always have to try and mark her, but like I was saying, teams are trying it week in, week out, and she's still scoring. So, is your best chance of cutting a ball off into the box when she does peel off? Can we stop balls through to her? I think that's probably the best chance we can have.
Yeah, they seem to set up in a 4-3-3 at least based on their most recent games. But you feel that Ireland can get at them in certain areas?
Yeah, like if you look at their game against France, particularly 3 of the 4 goals they conceded kind of came from wide areas. So is it an area we could target? And 2 of them came from, it was like a midfield runner running behind and just slipped in and it's a ball into the box and they concede that way. That's probably an area that we can maybe target, as we have Denise O'Sullivan, Marissa Sheeva in the middle, loads of legs, loads of energy. Can they get in behind? Or even the likes of Emily Murphy again, loads of legs, loads of energy. Can she run into them spaces that they seem to, like, they don't really want to track runners. They seem to be probably lazy in that way. So an area we can exploit. And I think their keeper as well is probably, in my opinion, a bit weak. I think she could have saved some of the goals, and even plays for West Ham. I was looking at some of the goals she conceded, and some of them are quite poor. Like, I don't think she's the most confident of keeper, especially if you look back in the games as well. She's very hesitant to come off her line. Like, sometimes you have keepers you play with and they just command the whole box. Anything in the box, it's theirs. But she's not really like that. She's kind of on her goal line, paws into the box. She doesn't want to come collect. And even the 2 goals she conceded recently for West Ham, the ball was played back to her and, a centre forward closed her down, caught her out, and then 2 goals from that. So I'd definitely be looking at an area of exploiting her. If the opportunity opens up, I'd be taking shots on her. Like, anything that goes in, I'd follow her in. Any back pass, I'd be following her in, get balls in on top of her. I don't think she's the most confident. So I think for us, it's definitely an area that we need to look to exploit, or it's definitely an area of opportunity. And I think we definitely need to come away having tested her on somewhat. I think she's definitely a weakness area that we actually, we really need to test her out.
Yeah, and in the wider supporting cast, something Aoife Mannion was talking about in one of the pressers was even almost looking beyond Ewa Pajor in terms of when she was asked about her, she kind of deflected it to like sort of other players as well. I think she specifically name-checked Jazz Mander, the analyst, in terms of like that she's been showing them, I suppose, some of the other players that need to be looked out for. Yeah,
well, I mean, I would say in terms of, if you look at Ireland's squad, like the WSL experience that we have in the squad, it's loaded towards the defensive part of the team. So you've got Brosnan, Anna Patton, Caitlin Hayes, Katie McCabe, Aoife Mannion is with Newcastle now, but has, a very large bank of experience. So these are players that are used to coming up against really top attackers week in, week out. Now, it doesn't mean, like Pajor, as Rachel said, she can still, she's so good and so clever that she can hurt you. But we do have, we're strong in that department. I think for Ireland, what would be interesting is how Carla Ward actually sets the team up, because if she sticks with, does she try and match the sort of 4-2-3-1 formation that Rachel alluded to, that the Poland have deployed in their first couple of games? That would mean coming away from the 3 central defenders that she's opted for, which coincided with an upturn really in how Ireland have performed. I don't think she will. So you're probably looking at what Ireland lined up with in Utrecht, save for Denise O'Sullivan coming back into the middle of the park, but you possibly could shift Emily Murphy out to one of the wings. Maybe Abby Larkin might get a chance, because, as Rachel said, there is a possible weakness there in Poland. And, as much as they are a good side, Poland, I think my concern is with Ireland, when they play these sort of tigerish, aggressive teams who are very good in transition, they have struggled with that in the past. I even think of like Greece last April. They bet them 2-1 but didn't play well. Turkey, especially away from home, when they needed a couple of late goals to beat them in Istanbul. Now, they're lower grade teams than what they're going to face tomorrow evening. Slovenia, last year, which was an absolute disaster, which makes me think that Carla Ward's going to stick. She's not going to change anything really, because I think everybody's still kind of scarred by that, because they tried to open up and play Katie more centrally, and it was an absolute shambles. So I think they'll be very aware of that and come in with this plenty of respect for Poland. But at the same time, the best form of defence often is attack. They're going to have to try and hurt Poland. They did that. They had a go at France in Tala. They had their moments against the Dutch. So there's no reason to think that Ireland can't go over there tomorrow and get on the score sheet and do a bit of damage and play to their own strengths. If the keeper is an issue, get balls into the box. Try and capitalise on set pieces where we are traditionally strong. I think it's going to be a very tight game, Raf, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was a stalemate. But little moments can swing these things. So it isn't just Pajor. It'll have to be switched on all over the pitch. But whatever way Ireland go with this tomorrow, they are going to be feeling a very experienced seasoned 11, because that's the squad that we have. Save for the two players coming in from the LOI, Maria and Ewa Clancy, who probably realistically won't feature. She's going to lean into experience. That's what she's done in recent times, and I think she'll continue to do that to try and get results over there tomorrow evening. Yeah,
let's listen to Carla Ward just from today's press conference. She was discussing the approach, especially off the back of the France and the Netherlands games.
I want to get results, as I said last week, against all nations. And when when the draw was made, we're coming up against three top nations, and you can't underestimate Poland. By the way, they're a top side with world-class players, and similarly to France and Netherlands. So it'll be the same approach as it would be if we were playing France or Netherlands. We want to try and get points from every single game, and this is what this group's about, as I've talked about quite a lot. And they're a hungry group. They want to continue to impress, and I think, I don't want to put all the emphasis on one individual game. I think we've got 4 games left. All 4 games we want to get points from.
Yeah, so as Anthony said there, Rachel, he doesn't expect Carla Ward to change things too much. Is that kind of your view as well in terms of formation and also generally the personnel as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be the same team and formation as what played against France. And the thing that might go for us, we know Poland are going to go all out to win this game. So they're going to, go out and attack. So sometimes when a team does that, they leave themselves a bit open at the back, and does that leave space then for us to, like we showed against France, where we're good at kind of sitting in and defending and maybe catching a team out on the break. Like this could go the same way. If Poland are going all out to try and win it, they'll probably, when you do throw everyone forward, you're a bit exposed at the back. It's an area that we can maybe exploit. So I don't see it changing. And in fairness to the girls, they all have played really well in the last 2 games. I don't think anyone warrants coming out of the team. I think obviously Denise will come in, as she missed the Dundalk game with a bit of a knock. So I think it'll be the same team, but I do think subs will be huge for us now. I do think the likes of Abby Larkin, we've Jess Sue in there now, like really good attacking players, and maybe have we not given them enough time in the last few games to make a real impact in the game. So I do think it'll be the same starting team, but I do think hopefully we can get probably impact subs on a bit sooner.
Yeah, so sort of a more gritty sort of display at first, and then try and catch those weaknesses that you mentioned earlier as the game progresses, if it's still sort of like a 0-0 or something along those lines.
Yeah, and look, when the more the game goes on, the more open it does tend to get. So the likes of an Abby Larkin coming on, if you have just say Ciara Carusa, who's worn the defenders down, has held up the play, and then you're bringing on an Abby Larkin with the last say 25 minutes, even 20 minutes, that's probably as a defender the last thing you want to see coming on at that stage of a game is someone who's real quick, nippy, biting at your heels. Like, it's the last thing you want. So I do think for us we do have that on our bench to come on, and she has, she's a good form for our club as well. Like, she's flying high, obviously scored against Belgium. I do think Jess Sue as well coming on. Obviously, look, if it is Aoife Mannion, we spoke before, she is that more defensive player. So if it is a case where we are winning the game and holding out, she might stay on, but if we are chasing the game, we need a goal. I think the likes of a Jess Sue coming on is going to be huge for us.
Yeah, and I suppose best case scenario would be a win tomorrow, but if it ends up being something along the lines of a draw Saturday, there is a bit of pressure then, because it does become a must win, and again, Poland away from home are still going to be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, it's all these games. This is life in League A. There's no mugs at that level. So it's going to be a real tough week for Ireland. Like, physically, it's going to be demanding again, because I think it will be a physical game tomorrow evening. I think they're going to get stuck in. They'll show Ireland plenty of respect, and the way they'll show them respect is that they won't hold back. I think Katie McCabe, as always, so important to Ireland, but she's probably going to be targeted. She almost always is. I think she can expect a few hefty challenges, and she's going to have to stay calm and deal with that, but it's probably nothing new for her. I think that, look, if Ireland get out of Gdansk tomorrow with a point, I agree with Rachel. I think that's a really good start to the week. You can take nothing for granted. It will be another really tough game in Dublin at the weekend. But like, having the second game at home is not insignificant. You know, you don't have to worry about travel and trying to, because you know, minimal training and time when you have the second game away from home, because you're losing that day just to get over there. So that all helps. The worst thing that could happen tomorrow evening is if they're well bet, you know, it would kind of open up questions about where they're going and you know, are they genuinely progressing? And when you look at the age profile of the squad, which is, I think, well, the last one was over 29. This one might be a little younger because of Clancy and Maria Reynolds coming in. But you know, when you have an older squad like that, and when you really lean heavily into experience, you kind of have to get results. Like, you're almost on win now territory. You know, it's all about getting to the World Cup. That's the absolute overriding aim. But if they were to have a bad defeat yesterday, a kind of Slovenia-esque performance and result, I think it would really massively halt momentum and open up fresh questions. But I have to say, I don't think that will happen. I think, in fairness, we've seen enough evidence since the Belgium game to suggest that they're on the right course. They know what they're doing, and they'll have enough about them to get out there tomorrow with a positive result and set up a real big day at the Aviva on Saturday afternoon.
And Rachel, last word to yourself. What's your gut feeling saying in terms of what we might be talking about next Monday and what will happen, I suppose, over these next two games?
Do you know what? I do have a good feeling for them. I just think tomorrow, you know, it's going to be a tough one. I just think I wouldn't be taking any stupid chances in the game. I think, like Anthony was saying, coming out there with a point would be great, and then I'd fully back us to go in the Aviva and get 3 points for them. That puts us in a great position then going into your last two games. Like, chances of Poland getting another point out of them games is probably slim. So if we come out with 4, we're probably looking at that third spot, I think, and we have it probably secured, which is great, and then obviously an easier route to the playoff for a World Cup. So look, I backed them. I think, we spoke about the Polish players and who they have, but I'm sure they're probably looking at us similar. Like, we have top players as well. So as much as you respect the opposition, you respect what's in your own dressing room, what's in your own team. So look, I fully back them to do the job on Saturday. It's just tomorrow now, be professional. If you have to take a draw, you take a draw, you get out of there. It's not the worst result. Yeah, so Tuesday it's going to be 4:30, the coverage on RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player. Anthony and Rachel, thanks for coming on. And I'll be joined by Keith Treacy and Barry Murphy after this little break. All right, you're very welcome back to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm joined now by Byron Murphy and Keith Treacy. We're going to talk League of Ireland. Of course, a couple of fixtures didn't go ahead just with torrential rain just ahead of kickoff, so they were pulled at the 11th hour. 3 games did go ahead, but Barry, there's something a bit bigger than football, I think, that was spoken about, particularly on Saturday, and that's to do with Gary O'Neill of Shamrock Rovers. And he was speaking to the club media channel about why he hadn't been playing over the last 6 months. And, he had been away from action. I think the last game he played was the FAI Cup semi-final against Kerry, and then after that had been absent, and he's finally revealed what it was, and it turns out he was battling cancer, testicular cancer specifically, that had spread as a mass in his abdomen. Now, fortunately, after intense chemotherapy, he's on the mend, and he's hoping to come back within the next few months. But obviously, it's a much bigger thing than football, and it's great to see him sort of back as well.
I thought it was a fantastic interview. He was so eloquent in describing his emotions and everything he went through, the support he had from his close-knit family, his friends, the club as well. And it just sums him up, really. He's won so many battles in like his quiet, unassuming way, and little did we know his biggest fight was behind closed doors. And I think he selected, as we said, a small group by his side, and they were the only ones he informed. He didn't want the big social media posts. He didn't want any of that kind of people feeling sorry for him. He wanted to battle it in his own way. The group knew about it and got behind him, and he spoke as well about the FAI Cup final, how they were ringing him, and how he left him a message before it as well. So it's something that Rovers have done really well. When there's been adversity at the club, they've managed to turn into some sort of small positive as well, and galvanise the group. The same around Josh with Stephen's son when he was ill, and used that as the galvanising force. And again, the same with Gary O'Neill, and he's a massive player for the club. He was the one that kind of kick-started this whole era of success with that penalty in 2019, scoring the winning penalty, and his couple of goals in Europe as well. So he's been a massive factor at that club, and it's just great to see him doing so well now.
Yeah, credit to him and the club as well with everything that's been going on. Now, on the pitch, Keith, of course, they went to St. Pat's and they won 1-0. Jack Byrne with a deflected goal. Now, the goal itself, you know, again, there's a bit of luck to it, but his actual sort of return to prominence has to be noted. Obviously, kind of like a new man, new hair on top of it as well, but playing well, and I suppose a benefit as well to the young lads like Victor Argenvuna around him as well.
Yeah, playing extremely well in the heat and the cut and thrust of a Dublin derby. Jack was excellent. I think he got man of the match on Friday night. I should really know that. I haven't been in studio. I can't quite remember, but he was absolutely excellent. I know Vinnie Perth, did give him man of the match. Himself and Graham Burke. When I turn up and watch Shamrock Rovers and I see Burke and Byrne on the same starting 11, I think lovely. I can't wait to watch this. As a Pats fan watching it, I thought could do without one of them in there, to be honest with you. But they were absolutely outstanding. And Stephen Kenny after the game said the deflected shot is it's unlucky. I would say you've got to go and engage an awful lot earlier than the flat back five. If you're going to allow Jack Byrne to wander within 25 yards of your goal, you're in trouble. And anything that happens after that is your own fault. It's coming from bad defending. And look, I don't think there's a need to press the panic button from a St. Pat's point of view. There's no shame in losing to Shamrock Rovers. They're an excellent footballing team. But I felt Pats came up short in terms of the basics, in terms of running around, in terms of intensity, putting people under pressure, making them feel uncomfortable. It didn't feel like a Dublin derby. And I know I was sitting in the studio in Dalymount, but you could hear fans having a conversation in Inchicore rather than, you know, a real red-blooded derby feel. It was sort of went into the stands because they were very, very standoffish. And I thought to give you an insight into how the game went, Burke and Byrne both come off in and around the 75th minute. Just goes to show you how comfortable Shamrock Rovers felt. And I know Pats probably had the better chances within the game. Goodmanson missed probably 3 really good chances. But I felt Shamrock Rovers were always comfortable, and had Pats got a goal, Rovers just would have clicked into another gear and another gear. They just seemed capable. And I think we're all a little bit fearful at this early stage of the season. Shamrock Rovers look way better than everybody else, and if they get a buffer going into Europe, it's very, very hard to see anybody else going on top of them.
Yeah, obviously they're top at the moment already, with obviously Bows losing to Sligo Rovers, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But yeah, there is that sort of, I suppose they're going through the gears, and they still haven't hit like 5th or 6th gear at this point.
No, and that could be down to the small kind of pre-season they've had over the last couple of seasons. I think Steve mentioned it after the end of the game. There was 2 weeks pre-season. That's obviously as a result of getting so far in Europe last season, but they just tend to hit the kind of gears around this point, moving into the European kind of fixtures coming up as well. And you need teams to be nearly get a lead on them at this stage. You look at the year Shells won it. They had a lead. It was up to Shamrock Rovers to put out their best 11 every week to try and claw that back. At the moment, they don't need to do that. They can kind of mix and match, put players in and out. Shabawale's come in, played a lot of fixtures for a new signing as well, where you probably think they don't need their best 11 to get over teams at the moment. They're disposing of teams at home quite handily. They're going away from home, getting results as well. From Pat's point of view, you just feel you've got to turn Rovers over at some point to put a real challenge in for this league title, and none of the big boys, bar Bows, have really done that. And we saw the way Bows did it. They went toe to toe with them. They should have been really 3-0 victors on the night. They brought it back to 3-2, but they're the only ones I've seen this year who've gone toe to toe with Shamrock Rovers, and I'd like to see more of that from players. I think that, as Keith mentioned, it's a Dublin derby. You didn't see a tackle going in, a proper tackle going in. As we mentioned, kind of, we were speaking off camera about Argenvuna. He's a 17-year-old. Go and put a tackle in him. Let him know you're in the Dublin derby. Jack Byrne, Graham Burke want to be lovely on the ball. No tackles went in. All the ones were pushes away from the kind of playing area. So I would have liked to see it a little bit more like from Pats in that area. They've got the quality to go and do it. Evanson had a great chance to score. Brilliant save from McGinty, but bar that, not too many chances.
Yeah, the 2 chances for Edmondson, actually, do you look at them as poor misses or actually just great work from Ed McGinty in terms of cutting angles? I
think he was brilliant, Ed McGinty. That's the thing. As soon as the ball went into Edmondson, he got his head down. That's where Ed McGinty stole those 2 yards. He gets his hands up so well and gets a brilliant block on it. He's a couple of great chances in Tala as well to score Edmonton, and didn't on the night, but from then he just felt Rovers were going to go up through the gears. They did. They were comfortable at 1-0. I think Steve mentioned off it how it could have gone either way, but I don't think it could. I think Rovers had gears to go through, as Keith mentioned as well, if they needed it.
Yeah. I think, sorry Raf, I think the question that everybody was asking before the game was, are Pats title contenders? And I think it was a resounding no after the game. Up front, they look like they're going to miss a whole host of chances, which if you're going to win the league, you need to be ruthless. In the middle of the park, they look a little bit off it in terms of energy and getting after people, and defensively, they're not keeping clean sheets. So there's a lot of improvement to be made, but not being in Europe may come back and be a positive towards the end of the season.
Yeah, how big a miss was Romal Palmer actually? Because obviously Chris Forrester came in and he's been brilliant over the years, but he hasn't been playing as much in recent weeks.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and look, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I'd have probably put Nugent in there just for his combativeness and being able to get around the park. Chris Forrester's a brilliant player, but you'd imagine when Chris is getting told you're playing against Shamrock Rovers, you're thinking, well, we're going to have about 30% of the ball. I'm brilliant on the ball. I'm not so sure what Christopher gives you our possession. I don't think he's world class as he is on the football. So yeah, I think Romal Palmer's a big one, Raf. I've been speaking to everybody in Inchicore, and everybody keeps pulling me saying we're in a title race if Romal Palmer stays fit. The fact that he's not fit again now just leads you to believe that Pats will probably come up short again. But Shamrock Rovers, very, very hard to go about him. And just on Jack Byrne again, I was in Inchicore 2 years ago in the same fixture, and Jack was injured. He was struggling with a calf injury, and he came over and we had a 5-minute chat, and he was just expressing to me how annoyed he was that he was injured, and I just can't get fit, Keith. I come back and then I do a bit of running, I get to a level of fitness and I break down again, and you could see the frustration in his face. I could feel it for him. He's gone and had a falling out with the manager. He's gone to Dubai, and now he's come back looking fit and lean, and he has a smile on his face. And it's great to see, because I've been in that boat where I fell out of love of football and I thought, I've had enough, I don't want to come back. But it's great to see such a talented boy fall back in love with football, and I think we're all enjoying watching him.
Yeah, even I think after the game he talked about the fact that actually the 2 previous pre-seasons he was carrying something, and this is the first one he's actually felt sort of free in terms of physically.
I think it's just, as you said, the love of the game. He looks like he really has a smile on his face, but he's playing a little bit further up for me now. He's like, he would have been kind of in that deeper position beside nearly Matt Healy at certain stages over last year anyway. But I think with teams that have that ultra low block as they do against Shamrock Rovers, it's very hard for him. It's that kind of quarterback role to break it down, to find those passes that he finds further up the pitch, and he has that now. He's nearly on the left side and Graham Burke on the right, cutting in on his left foot, and that's so hard to do it out the edge of the box. You've got that quality all around us. So Rovers have kind of gone to a more kind of defined 3-4-2-1 now. So it's working for him. He's getting higher up the pitch and getting shots off as well.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about the Dublin Derby in terms of this week, this Friday with Rovers against Bohs, but the other Rovers, Sligo, of course, got the better of Bohs at Dalymount Park, Keith. And when you look at it overall, the overall performance in Sligo, this wasn't a smash and grab in the end.
No, I've had a couple of little conversations with John Russell before Sligo games, and he keeps telling me we're a talented bunch, Keith, and we can play our way out of trouble, because I obviously have when you're in a relegation battle, you go a little bit more pragmatic, you play the percentages, but John wasn't having it. He was telling me that we have a way of playing here at Sligo, and our attraction to get players in the door is that we will play football, so he's not going to abandon that. I would worry for Sligo, but I've seen little bits of them, and I think, do you know what, they could be all right. And looking at it from early stages, Waterford look like they're really going to struggle, and I think if you ask John Russell and Sligo, would you take 9th right now? They probably would. But the fact that they can go to Dalymount and beat such a vibrant Bohs team at the minute should give them all sorts of confidence moving forward.
Yeah, and the goals that Sligo scored, so obviously the first one, a great ball in by Alex Nolan. From a goalkeeper's point of view in Taraska, is he kind of just left in no man's land? Because it is a brilliant ball right onto the toe of Will Fitzgerald from sort of point blank range. Yeah,
you just got to keep your eyes on the ball that's coming in. That's one of those ones that people kind of cross in front of the ball, and then they end up going into the back post. You've got to hold your position. You can see he nearly has the bread basket open, Taraska waiting for it to come in. It's a great little flick, a great finish as well, but he just has to stay for the first one, unfortunately. And the second one's a brilliant finish, a good set piece. Flicked on at the back, or the front post for him coming around the back post. You just felt that Bohs were going to give up something that night. They've got through so many games without killing teams off that they leave the back door open a little bit. Taraska's had to make a couple of big saves in the last couple of games to get Bohs to point. But I just think they were a bit desperate tonight, Bohs, sticking Patrick Hickey up front. Just shows they haven't got the goals. If Collie Whelan's not firing, the goals aren't there. Douglas James Taylor looks like he might be back now. Has he got the goals in him? Can he stay fit? That's the problem for him. Just Bohs aren't spreading the goals around, and as I said, without Collie Whelan, it doesn't look like they'll get too many.
And Dawson Devoy missing as well through suspension. Like, obviously it can be very simplistic to just say one player missing, and that's a root cause of it. But obviously he is a big miss because he's a big influence.
Of course he is. Yeah, Dawson is a brilliant player. He's the little technician. He's the playmaker, the magician for Bows, but as you say, I don't think Alan Reynolds would be saying to the Bows players, you have a pass because Devoy is not playing, you know, it's all going to fall apart. I just think they need to be a little bit more pragmatic. Sometimes you can try and force it through the middle, and if a team is defending well, you've got to ask different questions, playing behind them, get defenders facing their own goal. At times it seems a little bit side to side, and you know, not an awful lot of penetration, not asking enough questions.
Apart from the goal they actually got, which was
What a pass.
Yeah, now his surname is Diallo, but like I wear glasses, my vision is not at that level anyway. So
do you know what? Now, I wasn't in Dalymount, but I've had a look at the highlights, and I thought, I'm not sure what else Diallo was trying to do, but I'm not convinced he hits that pass. I'm not convinced he thinks this is what I'm trying to do, because when he hits it, he sort of looks a little bit surprised himself. And if I am doing Diallo a disservice, I completely apologise, but he looked a little bit surprised himself. It was a brilliant ball and a brilliant finish, but I think they need to do a lot more of that with the likes of Tierney and Devoy. They're brilliant footballers, but can you stretch teams in behind? And I do worry about goals for them. And yeah, when Patrick Hickey is jumping up front, you are thinking this is a little bit desperate, although he's more than capable of throwing a couple of goals in himself.
Yeah, because actually when you look at the stats in terms of the goals recently, so they haven't scored more than one goal in a game since the win over Shamrock Rovers, and we thought that maybe they might kick on from there, but it's kind of stalled a little bit.
It has. Like, Zane Myers has come in and did really well the other night. It just looks like they're not creating the chances. I know he had to make a few saves just like a goalkeeper the other night, but Sargent, but I don't think he had to make 3 or 4 against the bottom kind of 2 or 3 side. You're thinking you've got to win those home games. Got to be banging down the goals. If that's a Pats or Rovers at home, they've put them to the sword fairly early and the game's over. I just think they left it open for Sligo. The defence hasn't been as tight as it has been over the last couple of weeks, and they let them back into the game and ultimately came out with nothing. Yeah, now the dynamic has changed for the derby in terms of Shamrock Rovers are now the ones looking down at Bows in the table as opposed to the other way around. How do you feel that changes things? Because I know in the one-off games, Bows have tended for the most part to rise to the occasion. I don't think it matters. I think you could be bottom of the league and top, and you go into those games and it's nearly an equal. Played in so many of them where we've been on top in terms of league position, and it's who wants it on the day, who's prepared to go that extra mile. And Bows were that in Dalymount the last time. Rovers will want to put that right, because that was a really poor performance from Shamrock Rovers, as good as Bows were. I think Rovers need to come out. If they get a Dublin derby win against Pats and Bows, that's a massive week for them going into the latter stages before the European games. So I think they'll be all guns blazing for that. But again, Bows will fancy themselves in Tallaght Stadium as well. Yeah, your thoughts on that game as well, because it's obviously huge as well.
It's massive, and again, this is a little bit, when I look at Pats getting beat by Shamrock Rovers and I look at how Bows beat Shamrock Rovers in February at the start of the season, there wasn't any sort of nice, neat, pretty play from Bows. There was some nice play, but how they hurt Shamrock Rovers was getting after them, getting the Dalymount crowd behind them and hustle and bustle, all the derby fields, all that type of stuff, and they come out on top. If Bows can do that again and Tallaght keep that energy, it's probably on the eye, it looks a bigger pitch. I wouldn't know the dynamics of it. It looks a little bit bigger on the eye. But if Bows can get after Shamrock Rovers, make them feel uncomfortable, win the ball back in good areas and defend properly, there's every chance they could turn them over. But the next question is, do Bows have the consistency after Shamrock Rovers to go and give us a title race? And again, the answer is probably not.
Yeah, and one of the other result that did go ahead, of course, was Dundalk 2, Derry City 2. And Barry, it's a reflection, I suppose, of where Dundalk are at, that they're probably disappointed coming away from that game with a draw, especially when you look at the number of shots on goal that they had compared to Derry. Yeah, they were brilliant. I think Ed Beach made 3 or 4 brilliant saves and probably had his best game for Derry. I thought that Dundalk were excellent. Unlucky to fall behind. It was a really good, well-worked goal, actually, with a Depot scoring just before half-time, but they got themselves back into the game. Probably found themselves unlucky not to win it, but I just think he's done such a magnificent job there. He's galvanised a squad of, like, you don't want to call them misfits, but players who haven't been appreciated at other clubs let go. You look at the Wilson brothers come in, Tyreek has got 2 goals in 2 weeks. From that left back position, there's goals coming from all over. I think Ruby's a fantastic find. He's absolutely sensational up top. Him and then Owen Kenny coming in, they've linked so well. They've got real experience in that team. Rob Cornwall as well, Buckley. Just think there's the makings of a really good season for them. Yeah, and Darrell Horgan, of course, was missing in that for that game through suspension after his red card against Pats. But Tyreek Wilson, who was mentioned there, he played a role in both of those goals. Obviously the finish first, but then obviously there was the assist as well for the equaliser. Yeah,
always good when you've got fullbacks chipping in with goals. I think, as Barry says, you don't want to be disrespectful and call them a team of misfits, but I don't think there was a whole host of teams looking to sign Keith Buckley, Bobby Bourne's coming in from Galway. I don't think there was a whole host of clubs looking for them, and they've all hit the ground running. And you know, when you look, throw my mind back to when Dundalk were really in trouble, and you're thinking, is there even going to be a club tomorrow morning? It's great to see them back in the Premier League fighting well, and it's not like I'm talking about pragmatism and staying in the league. They've done it with an awful lot of good football as well. And Owen Kenny is somebody that when I go and watch Dundalk, I look for Owen Kenny's name, because every time I watch him, Raf, I'm more and more and more impressed with him. He's getting better every time I see him. Daryl Horgan still has a little bit in the legs. I know he was suspended for the game, but they seem to have more than enough there. And initially you would have been worried about Dundalk coming into the league, and I think everybody's mind is just settled, thinking they'll either be mid-table and absolutely fine, could even jump on the back of a European run. So Kieran Kilduff, early stages with Dundalk, outstanding.
Yeah, Derry City on the other hand, probably not a bad point in the circumstances. Now the James McLean red card was so late on that it wasn't really impactful in terms of the game, but at the moment for him it almost feels like if it rains it pours kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what's going on with James at the minute. And people asked me when we started hearing rumours at the start of the season that James was going to play as a defensive midfielder, a lot of people were saying, well, he's not a technician. And I initially thought, well, James has played over across the water. He will have a technical ability that should see him okay in the League of Ireland. I don't think it's James's game, and I don't think it's adding to Derry. I wouldn't go as far to say it's taken away. I know I have said that in the past, but looking at it, I don't think James is the problem, but James's athleticism is his number one attribute, and if you take that away, you don't have him running onto the ball as you do in a left wing back position or a left wing position. I think you're hurting him and you're hurting Derry. So if he still has the legs and the lungs for it, I'd put him out in the wing and just tell him to run onto the ball, cross it time after time, and highlight his attributes. And I'm sure his standards are something in the dressing room that a lot of players are probably struggling to go and reach, but in time it will become a good thing. But Derry are way off it all over the place, Raf. It's not just in the middle of the park, up the top end with some of the players like Clark, Markey. It was the other centre forward that's playing up there now. Debo. They've got some brilliant options. They're not scoring enough goals. They don't keep clean sheets, and they haven't got the intensity in the middle of the park. Maybe the change to the Gaelic round might do them good, but I believe that's an 18,000 seater stadium. So when you come out and there's 5,000 in an 18,000 seater stadium, the atmosphere is going to feel quite empty, even if it's not. So I'm not sure what to make of Derry, and I'm quite fearful for Tiernan Lynch. That point against Dundalk is a fine point, but given everything leading up to that, it's not good enough so far from Derry.
Obviously, Brian Maher has been missing since very early in the season. Just from in terms, not even so much from the art or the shot stopping side of things, but the distribution and that. How big a miss is he?
He's huge. He was everything they were doing well last season came through Byrne. He was playing out from the back, but I think a massive thing for them is the recruitment at the back. I think they lost Todd and Boyce in the off season. McLean, as you said, hasn't worked out in front of him. Winchester's been in and out of that team. I think Diallo's obviously a miss, gone to Bowes as well, and Adam O'Reilly's not fancied in his best position for me. So there's a gaping hole in the middle of the fence, and that's where the goals are coming from, to straight down the middle. I think Ed Beach has come in and he's starting to find his feet a little bit. Like your 22-year-old goalkeeper coming into the League of Ireland, where you're going to be in the guts and thunder of everything, going to put you under all sorts of pressure. And he made some early mistakes in his career at Derry, but good game the other night as well. And listen, with a kind of wrist injury for Brian Maher, it's one of those ones where you could feel great, come back, and then you're gone again for 8 weeks. So you've got to get the defensive setup right. And I just think that for Tiernan Lynch and Derry at the moment, I just think the writing's on the wall there. I think they need a massive result to turn things around. Could have been that against Dundalk, and you take care of your home games to get an away point would have been seen as good, but I just don't see where the points are going to come from for there.
Yeah, now it's a big game for them and Shells now on Friday, Keith. Where are you looking at in terms of that one? Because obviously Shells missed out in terms of, they went to Galway United, the game got called off, but they were on the back of 2 defeats before that, and then of course Derry not in great form, so it's a really intriguing game now. Yeah,
it feels like a 6-pointer really for both teams. Shells have been a little bit underwhelming. I think we all looked at Shells and thought goals might be an issue again. Kerr McEnroy in the middle of the park is again another name that I love. When he's on the team sheet, I love watching him. He's a throwback, will defend, will attack, will put tackles in, and I'm not too sure. It's 2 really underwhelming teams so far this season. I would probably give Shelbourne the edge, just given the fact that their game was called off, and I would imagine they'll try and push the tempo, keep the energy really, really high. But yeah, if Tiernan Lynch was to lose that, Raf, which I expect that Shelbourne will come out on top, I would be really, really nervous for them. But yeah, it doesn't look like Shelbourne are going to be throwing too many punches this season, nor Derry.
Yeah, now let's switch focus to Ireland, of course. I haven't spoken to you since before Prague, so let's open that old wound again. Yeah, so your thoughts on where Ireland were at, just from what you watched over those two games.
I thought they dealt with it well. The first, obviously, 15, 20 minutes. I just felt like coming to the end of it, I felt the preparation wasn't there for the penalty shootout. I was so annoyed by it. I think you look at where you're talking about marginal gains now in terms of football, and just when I heard that press conference about the penalty shootout and how we hadn't backed it, and you go to look at Treacy and the goalkeeper's coming out and handing the ball to his oncoming striker to take penalties, little things like that. I just felt like we're leaving ourselves open to losing here and criticism then, and I just felt they did it again, Treacy against Denmark in the final to get through. Like, I thought we were decent enough. I thought he got the setup right. I thought we saw, obviously, green shoots is a word being thrown around at the moment, but I thought we saw a bit of them, but I just thought the game management on the day wasn't good enough for me. I think we missed a real chance. I think we would have done Denmark in the final. I think we would have had that momentum bringing them back to Lansdowne Road and got through, but now it's all about the Nations League, and this is a massive camp coming up. Can we expose players to the environment around the Ireland team? Can we unearth a gem that's kind of been playing and hasn't got involved so far? Just this thing about continuity. I think we missed a massive chance against Macedonia to blood some of those players, and he didn't do that. So he has to do it now, because a lot of the senior players won't be involved in that camp. Yeah, because of course, just the timing of it, and of course, and there's a game against Granada friendly on the 16th of May, so that's in Murcia. But the Premier League players won't be in it. Championship players that are in playoffs won't be in it. So it's anybody who's not in playoff action, and that also probably includes League One players. So who would you like to see come in who hasn't been sort of involved or has been sort of on the very fringes of it?
I would like Jack Moylan to come in. Lincoln have obviously gone straight up. He's had a brilliant season, 10 goals and 4 assists. League of Ireland fans will know him from his time at Shelbourne. And look, this is not me saying Jack should be in the starting 11 for Ireland. You know, he's the one moving forward. But I think there's certain players that throughout a season might not be on the radar, but this is a time to pat them on the back and say, we are having a look at you. You are in our plans. Although you might not be the number one, come in, have a look behind the curtain. We want to have a look at you as well, see what we think of you. And like I say, this is just a big pat on the back. You'll be playing championship football next season, Jack. It'll be another big step up, and this is just like a cuddle from the Irish team telling you we're watching you and you're in our plan. So yeah, I'd love to see Jack, maybe even Jack Byrne, come in as well. He's been that good. I know we're all crying out for the little technicians and somebody that can do something. Why not let Jack, let the manager and the Jack have a quick look at each other? I was going to say Aaron Drinnan as well. He'd be in the playoffs in League 2 with Swindon though, so I don't think he'll get the call. But there's a lot of players that deserve a pat on the back, and just mark the card that they are being watched and under the watchful eye of Heimir Hallgrimsson.
What does Drinnan bring to the table?
Just goals again. For 21 goals for Swindon in League 2, 3 assists. He'll bring an awful lot, and I think when you come into these camps and these training camps, it can fall flat really, really quickly. But if you've got players who are coming off good seasons and are walking around like peacocks, training goes up a notch, and there's a feel good factor. So sometimes they can fall flat, but if you bring the right characters and the right people in, it can really create a bounce. And why not open up the squad? I mean, these are friendlies, Raf. Friendlies in international football are quite a rare thing now. Is it 4 friendlies we have on the bounce now?
That is the plan, yeah. I think three confirmed, and there's one I think they're trying to get as well.
I would be blooding all sorts of youngsters here, expose them to as much as you can. This doesn't necessarily mean you're in for the next competitive camp, but we're going to have a look and get you on the training pitch, and Jack Moylan would be my number one. Yeah, in terms of the League of Ireland players, it seems unlikely just given the schedule. I think Heimir more or less said it after the North Macedonia game that maybe he'd love to have a look at 1 or 2, but that probably won't happen. But then there's someone like Josh Honan, who was in the league previously. Unfortunately, he's been injured for the last wee while, but I think he's supposed to be coming back for Lincoln in these last few weeks of the season. So another one maybe who has been on the fringes of it, has been called up before. Yeah, well, it was all about that boat across the water, wasn't it? Why he wasn't getting in the squad. The league wasn't deemed good enough for him to be in at that stage. But like in that position, it's the way we're going to play. Left wing back, like Josh as well, he could slot into that, not a problem. I think someone like Teo Adamarola, I think he's totally different. He's a left wing back for Sheffield Wednesday. He's like aggressive. He's tailor made for that system. He clean sheet against Coventry at the weekend as well. And you've got some good other players like Rocco Vata, Andy Moran.
scored the weekend versus Leicester. I'd like to see someone like Jade Numa fast-tracked into the team. I think we're too conservative about these games, and it's Heimir talked about the continuity and that. I think use these games to solve future problems. Like if Ogbeni's not there, what's our outlet? How are we reacting to that during a game? We need to have ready-made replacements to come in who've had a bit of a game exposure. And again, as Keith said, you're not going to come in straight into the first team or maybe even the first squad, but the ones around, we need to have options, and these games need to be used for that, I think.
Yeah, I think Ume scored a brilliant free kick. I think it was, but for the B team, I think for Benfica.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, I just think bring somebody like that in and just give him the experience of being around that, and like let him set up get into that environment and raise his own levels. I just think he talks about the continuity again, and that's great when you're in a campaign, but now it's about exploring.
Yeah, just in terms of Mason Melia, and I'm not talking in terms of this particular camp, Keith, but obviously it would be music to your ears that Spurs are currently in the relegation zone, and they're not that whole argument of being too big to go down. They're not disproving it anyway at this point. But Mason Melia obviously has just started getting back, and he's playing for their underage team, and he scored I think 3 minutes into his debut a week ago. If Spurs were to go down, where would you be in terms of like in his head? What he would be thinking, because there's possibly opportunity knocks there, but then at the same time maybe there are pitfalls too.
Yeah, on the face of it, if I put myself into Mason's shoes, you're probably thinking if they go down, it's not the worst thing in the world. For me, being a little bit more educated and a little bit older than Mason is now, I would be thinking that Tottenham Hotspur, even if they do go down with the stadium have, with the finances they have, with the global reach that they have, there'll still be an unbelievable centre forward coming to the party. So I'm not saying it's as black and white as that. If Spurs go down, Mason starts for them in the Championship. I don't think it's as clear cut as that, but it definitely gives Mason a much, much better opportunity. I think it's excellent. He would have went over there in January. He's been injured. He's been struggling to get up to fitness, but his first game comes off the bench, scores nearly instantly. It would have just put his mind at ease that I can play at this level. I am good enough. I'm not an imposter. We all suffer from this imposter syndrome from time to time, but Mason would have just eradicated that altogether. So I'm absolutely delighted for him. I remember being in Inchicore for one of his last games, and he was telling me that his back was a little bit sore and he was struggling with it, but if he can stay injury free, there's every chance.
Carrying Pats last year, was it?
Yeah, probably carrying Pats last year, yeah. But no, it's brilliant. It's excellent to see young lads go over there. I know, wouldn't quite characterise him as hitting the ground running just yet, but he's shown good indicators that he can deal with life over in England. Yeah,
now finally, just on the Champions League, so we've got Bayern Munich against Real Madrid live on RTÉ2 and RTÉ Player on Wednesday. Coverage starts at 7:30. Kevin Doyle and Stephen Kelly joining Joanne Cantwell in studio, and then Darren Maloney and Ray Houghton on commentary. So the 4 games, the 3 other games, I mean, Liverpool against PSG, obviously Liverpool trailing 2-0, so that's on Tuesday night. Atletico Madrid against Barcelona, Atletico Madrid winning that tie at the moment, and then of course Arsenal against Sporting Club as well. In terms of Arsenal and where they're at, because this is a big week for them, even beyond this Champions League second leg, Keith, but there is that Manchester City game looming on the Sunday as well. In a way, having a massive game like this midweek, probably not the worst thing, because they obviously would be stewing to a degree on what happened against Bournemouth.
Yeah, I think if you're an Arsenal player, you want a game. Listening to Sky Sports over the last couple of hours, you wouldn't know there's a game midweek because there's a countdown timer in the corner for the Manchester City game. It's all in on that one. I'm not fully convinced. I do think that the next 2 games for Arsenal are going to be season defining, but Arsenal can draw or lose to Manchester City and still win the league. I don't think it's as clear as that, but the last 4 performances, Raf, have been really poor. The Carabao Cup final against City, they were underwhelming. The FA Cup against Southampton, really poor. The first leg against Sporting Lisbon, really poor. So it's one thing saying, oh, well, Arsenal are getting the results, but the performances haven't been great. It's been both now. We're not getting results and we're not getting performances. Generally, when I look at how good Manchester City have been and Liverpool over the last couple of years, the champions get stronger as the season goes on. Arsenal looking to be weakening, and they look a team full of fear. They look like they're fans at the minute. I'm full of fear. The team looks full of fear, and they looked against Bournemouth that we want to go out here and not get beaten. And it was just reverberating around the Emirates. Everybody was nervous. Everybody was on edge. Goals from open play have completely dried up. It looks like Arsenal have nothing but set pieces. And while I'm saying that's not an issue, Manchester City against Chelsea yesterday, how good they were from open play was unbelievable. Cherky, Mark Gahey turning in the 18-yard box and firing one into the bottom corner. My God, what Arsenal would do for centre-halves to be able to do stuff like that. But I am nervous, Raf, and I do think Arsenal are going to fall short on all fronts here. I think City will win the league, and I think PSG and Bayern Munich are much better options for the Champions League right now. And Arsenal were the best team for probably 8/10 of the season, but you don't get anything for 8/10 of the season. And yeah, I'm never going to believe in anything again, because I've just got that little bit of hope, and I was there, Raf, and I suppose this is what it's all about, being an Arsenal fan.
Yeah, and on that side of the draw as well, in the Champions League, that is, so Atletico Madrid having, getting that win at Barcelona, which is a huge result for them. Arsenal trashed them earlier in the season, although that doesn't really mean much at this point of view. But could you see Arsenal sort of at least snaking their way to a final, say, especially if it is Atletico on that side, and even if it was Barcelona, who are vulnerable at the back, especially with that high line they play?
Yeah, that high line, I mean, I went on record, I think it was November or December, saying I don't believe Barcelona can win the Champions League this season, because the high line was kamikaze. It was absolutely crazy at times, and I thought any decent European team with quick wingers or quick forwards are going to time their runs in behind, and they will be able to hurt Barcelona. They've dropped off ever so slightly. It's not quite as kamikaze. And look, when you've got Pedri, and I know Lewandowski is getting a little bit of stick because of the Barcelona press, he's still an unbelievable finisher, and they're still a very, very dangerous team. But given the fact, like, if Arsenal now, who do you want to play in the quarterfinals of the Champions League? You're saying Sporting Lisbon, and you're saying, who do you want in the next one? Atletico Madrid. So it's not going to get any easier for Arsenal in terms of the draw. We could easily get to a final, but I wouldn't be backing Arsenal against PSG, and I definitely wouldn't be backing them against Bayern Munich. Although Arsenal were top of the Champions League in the league phase, seems like a long, long time ago now to me.
Yeah, because that other side, the draw, is clearly the strongest side, part of it. I mean, the Real Madrid Bayern Munich first leg was brilliant, but Bayern, clearly they're a much more cohesive team than Real Madrid, who seem to be sort of badly put together up to a point.
Yeah, I think that's, you said it. I think it was Real Madrid in a nutshell. I think they were a shambles at the back, but so dynamic and going forward. They've world-class individuals that can win a game, and that goal that kept them in it, that's them down to a T. I think, like, you look at what they've done in the league as well. They've only won 5 titles in 15 years, so it's all about the Champions League for them. And I think that was, Alonso lost his job over that because he wanted to try and change that philosophy around bringing players in and introducing the fighting on all fronts, and the players revolted. But I don't think we've seen a poor back four defensively for Real. I think that they were so bad at the back. But on the other hand, you look at Neuer, he pulled off 4 or 5 unbelievable saves to keep Bayern in it, and you just look at the quality they do have. Vinicius Junior, Mbappe, you've got so much quality going forward that they can nick a goal over there and suddenly they're right back in the tie. I think there's something different about Bayern this year. There's a freedom in their play. I think, obviously, bar Neuer saves, they were dominant on the night. That kind of front three, front four, Kane, Diaz and Elise, they were absolutely excellent, and they just got the press so right. They let Real Madrid play out from Lumen at the back, and he's nowhere near as good as Courtois playing out from the back. We saw it against City, that ball into Valverde. Lunin doesn't have that, so they just latched on, nicked balls off, and probably sort of won by more in the night. Yeah, and on that side of the draw, I suppose, finally, if PSG, as expected, come through in the second leg against Liverpool, who looked very flat, obviously, in that first leg, and were to meet, say, Bayern Munich, if Munich actually finished that job, which way are you leaning? Because that's a mouth-watering game then for a semi-final. Yeah, it is. Again, they're fairly similar in terms of there's a freedom with PSG to go and play the way they want. You look at the front six they have, with the three in behind, Neves, Zaire Emery and Vitinha, and look at the front, Dembele. It's incredible what they have at their disposal there. But I just think Liverpool have been so far off it in terms of a real threat against PSG. I think they'll cruise during the week as well. I think they'll get a goal. That'll be tie over for Liverpool on the night, and going into that game will be a high scoring game. I see PSG and Bayern Munich. I just think there'll be goals in it, and I think PSG will just do it. I think Bayern now are all sights on this Champions League, and the pressure's there to go and win it, get it over the line. I just think PSG have that little bit of know-how after last year, and they'll be my favourites for me. And favourites to win it all, as Keith has said. Yeah, I think so. I just think they've enough about them, good at the back and quality all over. They can change the game, they can change the way they play. Defensively good. I just think they've enough to go and do it again. Yeah. I think when Baz is talking about Zaire Emery there, Fabian Ruiz has been injured for a while, and Fabian Ruiz is an unbelievable player, but you can't really say PSG have missed him, and that's all down to the young lads here, Emery. And
Bayern Munich have scored in the last 30 matches. They've scored 105 goals in the league this season. So when you've got a potent attackers they have, and Manuel Neuer saving, saves like he is, 40 years. What are you now, Bas?
40 as well. I could barely get out of the car.
Putting all the shame
It's mad, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
It is indeed. So obviously that game is live on RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player on Wednesday, coverage at 7:30. And then of course the Republic of Ireland women's trip to Gdansk is the day before, slightly earlier kick-off coverage at 4:30 on Tuesday, RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player. And then also the home game at Aviva Stadium on the Saturday as well. And we'll have live coverage of that as well. So Barry and Keith, thanks for coming in, and we'll catch you next week.